Hello, Doom friends. Back at you with another video today. Just some thoughts on one of the best years in the history of music, certainly in the history of metal music and stoner, proto, heavy psych music. And we had to go back all the way before my parents were even born. Yeah, that's right. My parents were not even around. It's 1971. Black Sabbath has just put out two of the first heavy metal, doom metal albums the year before, and have released their epic Master of Reality in July of 1971. You have Budgie's debut album in 1971 as well. Leaf Hound's Grower of Mushroom was also released in 1971. Blues Creation's Demon and 11 Children. Led Zeppelin 4 was released in 1971. The Doors' LA Woman, one of their best albums, was released in 1971. There's a lot more. 1971, one of the best years in the history of heavy music. And in this video, I wanted to cover three of the more underrated or underappreciated, underground albums from 1971. And thought it would be interesting to do a video on a few of these much smaller, very short-lived bands. And let's talk about a few of those today. Three of them. You may know a couple of these or one of these, but I'm sure I'll introduce somebody to some of these releases. I mean, some of the people didn't even know Captain Beyond when I did a video on them. So, pretty confident that people will not know some of these bands. One is called Orang-Utan. Orang/Utan, like the orangutan. They released one self-titled album in 1971, which is a real beaut with some really cool artwork. The other one is called Morning by Boulder Dam, spelled Boulder, B-O-L-D-E-R, not the other Boulder, but like a bold person. Boulder Dam, not like a dam, but dam like D-A-M-N. A very interesting band. They released one album called Morning in 1971. Third album I want to talk about, and band I want to talk about, it's called Banshee. They released an album in 1971 called Thinkin'. It was their second album. So those other two bands only released one album. Banshee released two albums. One self-titled debut, I believe in 1969, and then the second one in 1971. So I'll cover all three of these albums, talk about the bands a bit more, give you a slideshow of some pictures and everything, and hopefully introduce some people to some really underrated bands and albums from one of the greatest years in music history. Enjoy the presentation. Doom on. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to this presentation today about three bands and albums from 1971 that you have to hear, that are underground, underappreciated albums in the grand scheme of things. Hopefully this video can help you find a handful of new bands that you haven't heard. The first band I'm going to talk about is one of my personal favorites. I've known this album and band for many years now, and it's time it gets discussed on this channel. They're called Orang-Utan, like the ape. It's spelled O-R-A-N-G/U-T-A-N. So it's hyphenated and it's split up into two parts. And this band, Orang-Utan, was formed in London, and they were originally called Hunter. Now this band has a very interesting past, a very dysfunctional history. It was a very bizarre twist. They were actually betrayed by their producers and managers after they recorded their sole album in 1971, which is a self-titled album. They recorded that, and they then had their manager run off with the tapes to the United States, and they put out the record with that new name. Instead of Hunter, they changed the name to Orang-Utan, and none of the band members were informed of this. They put out the album on Bell Records behind the band's back, so the band was basically left to wallow and they were completely screwed, and that really pisses me off because this band was absolutely fantastic. This album proves that they could have had an amazing career, and they got betrayed, and it basically derailed the entire thing for them. They were formed by Terry Clark of the pop psych legends Jason Crest and guitar players Mick Clark and Sid Fairman. They also had a drummer and songwriter Jeff Cipardi and bass player Paul Roberts. So they have put out this one album in 1971 before getting screwed, and it was a lost classic of blazing hard rock with a lot of psychedelic vibes, a twin guitar attack, and lots of fuzz and wah. Also, powerful vocals and a really great bluesy feel to the album. The vocal work is really, really great. The guitar riffs are fantastic. It's a twin guitar attack, which is always amazing. They had the powerful vocals like Leaf Hound, Budgie, Sir Lord Baltimore, Bang, bands like that. Eventually, they were picked up and helped out with releasing this album legitly by Gerson Records, which is a great label from Spain. Gerson Records is a amazing label for this kind of music. If you want to find a lot of this old stuff from the 70s that played the Proto, stoner, and heavy psych, you can find a lot of those bands on this label. So check them out. I can put a link to them in the description. But they came and saved the day and helped with legit permission and in coordination with the band members. They put out the self-titled album so you can get the physical format of this album. Now, the album itself is really great from beginning to end. It opens with a blasting song, I Can See Inside Your Head. The meat and potatoes of the album starts with Slipping Away, which is probably my favorite song on the album, track 2. Love Queen follows up on track 3, which is one of the better songs on the album as well. And of course, probably their most famous, well-loved song, Chocolate Piano, which is a 6-minute epic, really is an anthem, and it really truly is a great song. If You Leave follows that up, and it continues to be very, very quality stuff. The last few songs are not as good as the songs before, but at only 8 songs, it's another one of those classic examples of really no filler, just a nice 35-minute album, cuts right to the chase. Not time for bloated excess or anything like that. Lots of great bluesy heavy psych, some really gnarly guitar playing. This album needs to be heard by everybody. The band did not get done right, and it really sucks that they had to go through what they had to go through. I've read many stories about it, but they left us with one classic album from 1971. So check out the self-titled Orang-Utan album. You will not regret it. For band number 2, we moved to the United States. Fort Lauderdale, Florida, so down in the deep south. There was a band in the early 70s called Boulder Dam who released a very monumental album that is still got a great cult following to this day called Morning. And Morning is a really great record. It was released in 1971 by Hit Records with only around 200 copies. So a very rare collector's item. It was also released in 1990 on the Rockadelic label. So the album is a very dark, groovy album of late 60s psychedelic boogie rock. It's like Grand Funk and James Gang. The 1971 album is their lone album, just like the last band. So unfortunately, we've got 2 bands. Like a lot of these early 70s bands, just didn't have a chance for varieties of reasons. Once again, though, this band was picked up by Gerson Records to release their debut album. So thankfully, a lot of modern audiences have been able to find the album. It has a pretty good rapport on YouTube. I think the album upload's doing pretty well. But this album is just a blast of great proto stoner rock, lots of great guitar licks, and a vocalist that has a very powerful set of pipes. He sounds a lot like the powerful singers from bands like Buffalo and Sir Lord Baltimore. It's a very gruff, manly voice, very distinct voice for this type of music, fits in well. Of course, they were not successful in their early days and therefore did not, stick around, but luckily they have picked up a label. Boulder Dam produced a very assured and accomplished set of fuzz-laden boogie, a touch of proto-metal, and some fantastic vocal work. The album has 7 tracks and has great songs like Got That Feeling, which is a really catchy song, as well as Find a Way, Breakthrough, and the closing track, Dead Meat. Dead Meat being a 16-minute epic, a 16-minute doom monster. with some very gritty, soul-invoking vocals and lyrics about struggle. It's just a haunting song, and it freaks out. It has a lot of freak-out moments. So go grab popcorn for that song, because it feels like you're listening to almost a full album just in one song. The rest of the songs are all your typical 3-4 minute track. Again, cuts right to the chase, lots of great riffs, lots of catchy choruses. Unfortunately, again, just never released more music after this. But their one album, Morning, is definitely worth your time, so go check it out. Third and finally, we have another United States band called Banshee. This band was formed in 1969. It evolved out of another band called People, and it had Joey Miguel DeJesus on guitar vocals, which has got to be the best name I've ever heard. I mean, what a sweet name. Jose Joey Miguel DeJesus. DeJesus is his last name. You got Peter Alonge on lead guitars and vocals, and Victor DeGilio on drums. So I'm gonna take a guess and say that these guys are Italians, judging by their names. They actually landed a deal with Atlantic Records, amazingly, and recorded a self-titled debut album in the fall of 1969. But the record didn't take off, and of course, Atlantic Records, being a major label, dropped them without giving them a chance, of course. They signed with Polydor in 1971 for a second album. This is the one from 71 that I'm going to be talking about, called Thinkin'. The self-titled debut was really great. Thinkin' was a little heavier, but this is, was not a super heavy band necessarily, not doomy really, or super metal. They were more of a psychedelic type of band with some folk type elements and prog elements to them. They also had some good heavy down-tuned riffs at times. They got some wah and psych drenched riffs throughout, so if you're into the heavy psych and stoner rock, you'll find plenty of fantastic riffs on both albums, but they got a little heavier on their 1971 sophomore album, Thinkin'. But it also failed to make a commercial impact, and then they broke up by the end of 1971, so another band that was a very short career, only releasing 2 records, but hell, that's better than the one that the previous bands released. But Banshee released a great record in 1971 called Thinkin', which deserves to be talked about because not very many people know about this. It kicks off with one of my favorite tracks on the album called John Doe. Guitar playing is truly tremendous on this whole album. The licks are just beautifully intense, greatly melodic, typical of early 70s heavy psych riffs. Vocal work, fantastic. Will Ya is the second track, another really cool track. There's other great songs throughout the album. Iceberg, Children of the Universe. Iceberg is a unique song. It slows down and it's kind of a dirge. Pretty atmospheric. The closing track, 38, has got to be, if not the best, one of the best songs on the album, with some tremendous riffs, and it stretches out at 9 minutes long. They finally start going some nice lengthy heavy psych, and they really stretch it out. 9 minutes of great guitar work, great vocal work. If you listen to one song from the album, 38 is pretty much the one you want to listen to as a stoner and doom fan. I just thought I would mention Banshee because they still don't have a very large following, but the people that do know them have nothing but praise for the band. So definitely an essential band for Proto stoner fans and psych fans. So check out Banshee. Also check out Orang-Utan and Boulder Dam. Hopefully this video was interesting and you found a few more bands to check out, a few more albums that you'll like. Thanks for listening, and doom on. I will talk to you soon.